On this episode of Bobscaping, it's time to trim our winter gem boxwood. So we're going to combine a couple things we did in previous years. Even though there's no mulch around this, or mulch for those who prefer the other pronunciation, around this shrub, we're going to use tarps to catch the clippings. This makes cleanup easier. So these are some big leaf tarps. These are 10 by 10 leaf tarps that you can buy on the internet or at your local garden center. We're going to place them around the base of the shrub. And again, takes a little time to do this, but especially if you're working in an area with river rock or decorative stone, it helps to catch your clippings instead of having to pick them out of the stone or mulch. There, I said mulch the way people liked it that time. Okay, so we'll get this tarp on this side as well. We're going to put this around here. Try not to leave any gaps. Okay. All right. Get that around the back. So if you spend a few minutes getting a tarp around your shrub, it will save you cleanup time. My objection to putting tarps down was always you tend to trip on them. You're moving around the shrub, tend to catch your feet on them. So, okay, so here are hand shears. I've already put a little bit of motor oil here and wiped them down with a little bit of oil. You can also use WD-40, works well. And then for touching up your blades, one of these little knife sharpening stones works well. You always want to sharpen with the bevel of the blade. These are pretty sharp, but just give them a little touch up. Watch you don't cut yourself. The sharper they are, the easier it is to get a cut. There we go. We'll just touch them up a little on the beveled side, and then on the flat side you can just give them just one or two light touches just to finish off the edge. Okay, so looks like they're ready to go. You can see we got some new growth here, so you want to use deliberate motions when you're doing this kind of shearing, since some of it's going to dig into some of the stems that are a little more woody or tough. It helps to have a deliberate motion, and you want to keep the tips up as you're trimming so they don't dig in to the shrub. I'm just starting right around the top here, trying to keep it. It's had pretty good shape to it in the past, so as long as we don't go too far astray from the old shape, it should come out looking pretty good. I'm not timing this. I know with the power shears we did this in 3 minutes, which of course is the reason a lot of professionals use the power trimmers. It's to save time, and I've always said if they're kept sharp and in proper adjustment, they cut just as well as these hand shears. This is the last day of June, so trimming this boxwood now in Pennsylvania probably will pretty much hold its shape for the rest of the season without putting very much new growth on. It may put a little bit on, but sometimes when we used to trim a lot of landscapes that had the taxus or yews, we would wait until about the first or second week of July to trim them in the hope that they didn't put on any new growth after we were done trimming. That way they would hold through the fall and winter season. So here we are, we're just working around the shrub in a circle, just working our way down. Some people like to see the full-length video, so we'll just hang in here and see how long it does take to trim this winter gem boxwood. I've always liked this particular type since it has the shiny leaf on it, and it puts on a fairly fast rate of growth. It also doesn't have the real bad odor to it that some of the standard boxwoods do. If you ever go down to Williamsburg, Virginia, to some of the colonial displays, you'll notice some of the boxwood there are very strong odored, which is unpleasant to a lot of people, even though it's probably one of the things that keeps deer from eating boxwood. This is a good shrub to plant if you have a lot of deer browsing in your area. Nothing worse than planting a landscape and then having it chewed to nubs by deer. Of course, you can spray deer repellent on the shrubs, but it's easier if you don't have to get into that situation where you have to spray them or tarp them every year. Okay, we're getting around the front again here. And some people have commented that the neighbors probably don't like the loud gas motors on power trimmers, which of course is true, especially on a Saturday like today. Some of them could still be sleeping since it's pretty early. Okay. Again, I'm trying to use deliberate motions, make clean cuts, trying to get everything cut as I go. This shrub has been featured in quite a few of my trimming videos, so it's a real star. It's a real star on Bobscaping, appearing so often. Just about done here. I'm guessing this could got a little deep in that one. It'll fill back in when it grows. But again, you want to try to keep the tips of your shears up and trim on the less instead of more. Don't try to take too deep a bites when you're trimming. Okay, coming around the back. Of course, here we don't have any tarp coverage, so we'll have to rake up those clippings. Okay, so that looks like it came out pretty well. Could be a little touch up if you wanted to just go back in and touch up a few things, but overall looking good. And here are tarps. So again, all you have to do is, when you pick them up, just try to pull them toward the center. Get the clippings to go inward instead of falling outward. Okay. Oops. Roll it toward the middle, like that. And anytime, of course, your shears, if they do get wet, it's always a good idea to wipe them off, make sure they're dried real well so they don't rust while they're in storage. We'll get this tarp picked up here too. Okay. Fold it on inward. Okay, so those tarps can go in the compost pile. You can see, even though we don't have mulch there, it kept the clippings off the ground and made for an easier cleanup. For this episode of Bobscaping, this is Bob.